And we got green check marks. Fantastic. Oh, I forgot to ask when we were off air. Sorry, I should have. Uh, your last name, is it Strentse or is it Strentse?
Just strengths. Yeah.
Strentse.
Yeah, I guess the E's just silent.
Yeah, perfect. I just wasn't sure. Sorry about that.
No, it's all right.
Welcome back to Startup Talk. With me today is Matt Strentse, co-founder and CRO of Iversoft Solutions. Now, I believe I had one of your co-founders on, Graham Barlow, a few months ago,
Yeah.
maybe uh, almost a year, maybe now.
Yeah.
It's been
Yeah.
a while.
Yeah, it
Good.
has been a while. Yeah, yeah.
And why don't we start off letting people know, what does Iversoft Solutions do?
Huh, sure. Well, thanks for having me. First off, Iversoft is that we design and build custom digital solutions for companies looking to like either grow or scale. So we build anything from like basically full mobile apps, full mobile platforms, enterprise software, big web projects, things of that nature, and it's all intended to either help startups put a tool or the tool they need to communicate with their clients in the market, or if we're helping like existing companies sort of upgrade their services or build new tools to better communicate with their clients, like enterprise kind of solutions. So that's pretty much the gist of everything we hang out and do every day.
That sounds great. And you co-founded Iversoft back in 2009, starting from a dining room in Toronto. What inspired you to launch the company, and how has it evolved since then?
Well, actually, the first thing that sort of the impetus was like the big recession. So the like the U.S. housing recession really affected like jobs in Canada. Both myself and the co-founders had like jobs sort of all lined up and everything at the end of our sort of last educational rounds. Like the other co-founders finishing her master's at U of T, I was finishing my degree at Ryerson, what's now Metro. So like it just happened to be right around that time. Both of us had like multiple job offers, working for other people in industry, and suddenly like nope, everything stopped. And just like as a happenstance, Vicky had been messing around with sort of just the platform, just brand new idea called iPhone came out, and she's like, oh, how does this work and everything else. And honestly, it was a lot of luck and champagne, and it just happened to be sort of like the right lessons came out of this too, like networking at first, like knowing the right person that got us like the first contracts, to like expanding the company, to also being a little bit understanding that business is a bit of luck, all came at the same time in the process. So we just said like between, I think, a really good belief in our own abilities. Like Vicky's a very gifted developer, like a very gifted software designer. She's like, and her whole family has a long history of doing it. Her grandfather even has a Turing Award. So like I had supreme ability in like Vicky's understanding and that she could do it. And at the time, she had been used to working on much more complex systems than what like a mobile phone could provide. So it was kind of like, we had a very good skill offering. And then the rest of it was just like a belief in what we were doing at the time. Like I had come from like heavy industry working tier one automotive, to go back to school and to do like a whole other degree because I was really good at what I was doing. And like immediately from iPhone, the first one, I could sort of see the parallels. Like when you're developing like a tooling system for a new automotive line for a new car that's coming out, which is what I was doing, like doing a lot of the tooling, building, and everything, to like doing this in digital. You can kind of see right away, like, hey, there's a lot of parallels here that are cool, like the way you design it, the way you interact with it, the way that it has to function, the outputs. There's a lot of similar, and as time has gone on, that it almost blurs the line now. You know, the development for mobile was at the beginning almost Wild West, and now it like very much mirrors engineering practice, like very stringent, like because it works, like to get stuff out the door. So that was sort of where the beginning came from.
Iversoft began with mobile app development, including projects like the first solitaire game for iOS. How did those early projects shape your company's direction and culture?
I think it provided a lot of lessons. So like the games were great. It's what allowed us to like scale the business in the first place. Grab the funding. Like it was our IP. They still generate revenue today. But what we also learned is like it's very much a Wild West market. There's a successful game is it's very subjective. Like it could be popular for a week. There's a lot of unknowns. So like the risks go high. But at the same time, we were sort of developing out those games. We got a lot of opportunities through the network that we just happened to have on like the sort of the industrial commercial side, and we could really see the longevity for that. So that those games really helped us learn the lessons. Like, holy cow, like this is, you can do really, really well with like the mobile gaming market, but it's like super difficult. It requires a lot of liquidity. It's an ever more saturated market. So how do you get your title above the top? Like what tactics? And it becomes a lot of marketing, very heavy like capital input requirements, versus working with like big companies that are saying, hey, we have like huge problems here. We need like a 5-year cycle and your expertise to come in and assess and like build this platform and to actually get it implemented and running. And, we can do that concurrently for like more than one business. So it taught us the lesson, like there was a much clearer path to scaling through the enterprise method rather than gaming, which was like more chaotic. Maybe it'll explode, maybe we'll have a scaling problem, and then all the problems that come with it, versus like, okay, by working enterprise, like, we have longevity with the business overall, but also with like client relationships, reputation building, sort of forecasting ability, stuff like that to actually grow a business.
Over the years, Iversoft has expanded your services and team. What are some of the pivotal moments or decisions that contributed to this growth?
Like in terms of like adding people to our team, it would be
or expanding your services, either or.
Yeah, honestly, it's experience. It came through experience. Like we had like a skill set to begin with, very much mobile. Vicky's background was in, just software, as, a lot higher enterprise level software. So she already had like a foot in that water. So like when we decided, when we're working with a client, as we were able to build our reputation and put more and more projects under our belts, we get introduced to like larger clients, and those larger clients generally need more services. So it's like, okay, is there enough budget or project or whatever that we should bring this person on, or should we get, and that sort of dictates, like we start looking at like the forecasting, how much do we need the skill set of these people? Is this something that comes in the market? Should we move in this direction? And we just decide as a team, like, yeah, okay, that's great. Let's invest in these people because we're going to need them. And more often than not, it's been successful the way that we've sort of looked at it. Like, and generally we do that as a group company. So there'll be like, as you said, like you've interviewed Graham, there's Vicky and myself, and we're just like, okay, let's have a look at this. Like, what is the best direction? How much do we need this skill set? And if we just see it keeps growing and growing, then obviously like, okay, we need these people here. Like there's more, right? This is not someone we want to, and then if it's in between, it's like, okay, that's why your network is really important, because it's like, okay, can we grab some people in these skill sets on contract as as a middle ground in between, or can we, do we need to expand? So it's really just the experience of moving up the client ladder and saying, okay, these people need this, and this. Okay, but now we're working with these people. Now we're understanding that they need that as well. So that's and if you're going to work on that client tier, you're inevitably going to be ending up, adding some services. And that's actually the impetus of where our partner program came from in the first place. It's just like realizing this need of the clients and what they're looking for, and how do we best service them, and also how do we best build the best relationship with them for long-term service, because that's the way Iversoft grows. It's like, we can only grow based on the successful outcome of an outcome that we did for a project for them. So the project is key. That's what's really gonna help us build our own reputation. So it's like those good outcomes are critical for Iversoft and all of their clients. And so that's, all boats rise, I guess, would be the phrase people like to use.
It's great to see project management being used when you're talking about, planning and where it's going and looking at the demand and whether this is a short term or long term. As a lifelong project manager, I don't often see early stage or even, startups thinking like that. So it's nice to see those practices.
Honestly, I think because I came from automotive, like both the co-founders, we were a little bit older, sort of like our late 20s, and we had worked for big companies before. And I think the mentality you talk about there, thank you very much. I'll take it graciously, the praise. But in all honesty, I think it came because we were shaped by people, in senior roles in big companies saying, okay, we need to do this successfully. There's a budget attached to every project. So here's here's the way we do this. And I think we did take we imported some of those lessons in because we were hell bent on being successful. So, but yeah, like that might be the difference between the younger sort of startups right out of school versus sort of where we had come from.
You emphasize building strategic partnerships, such as your collaboration with Bridges and Associates. Can you share how these partnerships have impacted your trajectory?
It just allows us to better serve our own clients. So if we've got a client that's, we're servicing them in our service group or service range, a lot of the times the partnerships that we built are in adjacent services, stuff that we don't provide, we're not expert in, but the people that we work with very much, they go hand in hand with sort of like what we're providing and what they need to do with the rest of the company or whatever their service package is. So they work adjacent to each other. So it's, in some cases, Bridges and Associates is the perfect example because she's a change management consultant. So she has to go in there as like sort of like a person on the ground and actually assess the area, say, okay, we need to have, these employees need to do this. These are the systems we want to implement. And when it gets to that point of it, to help the efficiency of how she's reorging the company, that's where we usually come in and say, okay, we need, a suite of tools here that's going to allow this, for instance, airline to be able to automate this and this, or for, to automate ticketing or whatever else you want to do. So that's where those partnerships come in. So like we've got other fantastic partnerships down in Kitchener-Waterloo, for example, for someone who does like strategic communications. And they're, one of their services is that they help companies win pitch competitions. So it's like those types of examples are like perfect for like what we're talking about here. That like they lend hand in hand. Startup will be like, okay, we've got this idea, we want to build this feature set out. We want to participate in this, pitch competition. Great, we can refer them. Hey, we know someone who could help you get ready for that, or we know someone that could help you get that messaging out, or whatever else. So like adjacent industries is sort of how I look when we're building the partnerships.
So why do you think many startups don't go after strategic partnerships early on when they can be so advantageous?
Honestly, I think it's knowledge. It's like it's so easy for me to say what I'm saying now, but like when I was at the beginning, I didn't know it either. I think there's even songs about that. I wish I knew what I knew now when I was, right. Like because it's so true. I don't think there's enough mentorship in Canada, to be honest with you. I wish there was more. And I know it's like a cliche line. It really is because we should start buying into that cliche and trying to change sort of the direction. And I literally think that's what it is. There's so many basic things that when you sit around sort of networking tables, or if there's dinners where you've got executives now and these people have all gone through these stages across their career, you start hearing a lot of the same, like, oh yeah, I messed that up. Oh yeah, I did it this way. And the stories start, you have 5 or 6 people saying, I made the exact same mistake and this is how I did it. Right. And they all ended up making, so if there was that, but you start realizing that those problems were, very avoidable. So if there was some place, if there was better mentorship, if there were people teaching when they were young and enthusiastic getting into entrepreneurship, right? There's like, all right, entrepreneurship is fantastic. Just remember these things, right? Avoid this because this is what this will happen, right? And I think you drastically see a lot of that stuff. People, I think, would leverage it. I think they really would because knowledge is power.
Speaking of knowledge being power, we got a question live here from Santi. Next week, I will meet with a possible partner in order to discuss a possible partnership. We want to provide appointment and sales services to B2B companies. Do you have any advice for them?
Really understand who you're trying to partner with. Find out what it's always down to like need. If your company can fulfill that pain point in a really focused way and take that off their hands, that's the best. That's the absolute best thing you can do. That sets up a perfect relationship. You've now taken that stress and that issue off them, and performing that duty like accurately and perfectly will both build your reputation so other people can both utilize you, but then you've built like a long-term relationship with the people you're working with, because they're like, nope, service is done. I don't want to think about this. These guys do a great job. Let's just keep rolling along, right? And that's key for any company.
The one thing that I often have startups fail when they're talking about partnerships is They never really think about what's in it for them, what's in it for the other person when they get into it. They say, oh, I'm going to partner with this person or that person. It's like, okay, well, before you get there, what's in it for them? And you
That's right.
really need to lead with that. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of not interested.
That's true too. And it depends on the partnership. Like in our case, like if people were like, when we have startups come and ask us to build their IP for them, that's a very different partnership than sort of saying like, how are we sort of attacking the market together? And I think that's really key too. And I think more startups should really be looking for that, when like a lot of the times they'll look to partner with people for money. So they get it, right? They need capital investments to like make something come true, but they should also be putting, I think, almost as much energy at the beginning to finding like who's a really good technology provider with a great track record. Because like the overhead, if you start doing the numbers on like, getting a company like ours to build their IP very quickly with a mature process, getting stuff into market, which is what we do all day long and have for 16 plus years, or trying to build your team, like you're going to quickly realize like speed to market, you want to mitigate your risks, and your investors want to see that as well. So you definitely want to be able to like, okay, this is the best way I'm going to get to the market. So look for that technology provider. If you need a tool, don't suddenly think that you need to distract yourself or your entire team with that tool. You really want to keep that focus on the client. What does the client need? What, like, really study the client. And who knows, like you might even find even more verticals within that client base if you really know that client. And everybody does. Like that's why you see a lot of expanding services once they get into something that's successful. It's like, okay, and now we're providing this as well. So, really focus on those things.
Great answers. Thanks for the question. In tech industry, company culture is crucial. How have you and your team cultivated a culture that supports innovation and client success?
A long and painful process. I'll be honest. I like this. We basically, I'll be honest, like we used a lot of different means in which to hire from the beginning, which everybody does, because I mean it's not a mature process. And it got to a point, and we were lucky enough to have someone working for us, Steph Barlow, who developed an entire recruiting package. So like, and it's because of like, we recognized early on culture was a huge issue. It's always been something within our vision statements. It's stuff we talk about during strategy. It's always company culture is key, because you need to have the best outputs from people working with you are those that are in a good mood, that are like, the opposite of Dilbert. So like we always said, like, how do we keep cohesive? How do we keep everybody informed? And it was like our own conscious decision to like saying, okay, these are the types of personality traits that we love when we're hiring. These are like, can we look for these people? And the groups, the other methods that we were using to hire didn't necessarily like ask questions in that direction or ask, to try and get insights from people on those areas. So it wasn't as successful, excuse me. And so as soon as we like took the time and effort to actually build our own recruiting model, which has worked amazingly, from like the way people apply to like the interviewing processes to the welcome package that you get here, it's amazing. Like my hat's full off. I had nothing to do with it. It was like, a lot of it comes down to my co-founder, Vicky, and working in conjunction with Steph Barlow, and Steph Barlow like hit it out of the park. She did an amazing job. Her and her team, like to this day, still helping us out with HR, but it was really her ability to build that whole system that allows us to both scale and actually find like really good candidates that actually will stay on board with us a lot longer than the average employee does. So no, total credit to them. So yeah, that's how we sort of dealt with it.
Sounds great, because most startups, they stumble through the process. They say, okay, we need to hire, they get some funding, and they just go and hire a bunch of people, not really understanding that one or two bad apples can ruin the whole batch. And if you don't deal with it, you're in trouble.
Yeah, it's like I've been asked the question a few times now, that just randomly the people come up at like events or whatever, and they're saying like, hey, we've got this like team of 20. Like, what's your attitude on having like, the probationary period? And I was like, if you've got a team of between 20 and 25 people, those people are really critical, and the team is small enough that everybody knows each other by name. Everybody works in and around each other, probably eat meals and have breaks together. I said just one problematic personality in that whole crowd can destroy everything. There was an executive right when Vicky and I were just starting the company, and he told us the story at this event about like his company, I guess, had become a $1 billion company over time. And he was saying like culture was such an important thing that there was a really, really successful company that went completely belly up because of bagels. And the bagels were like the company used to provide all these bagels from one of the shops so that people could come in. There was a conversation piece around them. People would come in and grab breakfast, toast them, whatever, right? The simplest thing, like we're not talking huge expense. And then eventually when the company had grown up or scaled a bit, some of the CFO, some of the personalities had been changed out, and someone inevitably was like, hey, look, I can save money by like cutting out these bagels. Simply just stopped providing the service, and the culture fell apart. And I've always remembered that story because I was like, wow, talk about the butterfly effect. Like trying to save $80 a week on bagels led to sort of social uncohesion. Like it was just like an amazing story. Excuse me.
It's good when people catch that. Like I remember working for, I'm going to say Mercer Human Resource Consulting, and they wanted me to cut a bunch of money out of my budget. And we were looking at it. So my boss said, don't cut your entertainment budget. Think exactly for that reason. And it's funny, I have this argument with people about what is the biggest motivator for your employees or your people. And I always say food over money. And I say in this scenario, you assume you have a job and you're working at a salary and, you know, everything's the same. But, you know, you go on a $25 gift card or you want bagels. People want the bagels because it's not just about the food. It's about the experience, about talking to people. It's about that feeling. It's about that whole thing. And a lot of people will argue with me. It's like I'm crazy when I say they want that and that they'd rather take that over money.
No, think about it. Like business deals happen over dinner tables. Like that's why you have big family dinners. Like that's the whole. There's a reason that it's about. It's the human psychology and food. Like when people get together. So it's like no, there's a big thing there. And like just again running the numbers and being like a spreadsheet warrior pretty much destroyed a company. So it's like you're not saving any money. Like there's a certain, you know, I think there, and I remember other weird random stuff too, like even the federal government, they used to have all these plants everywhere, like internally around their offices and stuff. And there's tons of studies that show like indoor plants or whatever significantly improve morale and mood and everything else, right? And then there was some administration going, nope, it costs such and such like $12 a week to water these things, get rid of them. It's just like, oh god. Like we need some way to like measure productivity better, I think. Because if we did that, like you wouldn't start looking at those things as savings. That would be like they'd be moved over to the category of like exactly what not to do.
Yeah, and I think people forget that people do business with people.
That's right.
And it's not all about spreadsheets and numbers and I sent you an email. And a classic example, the exact same thing as I remember when I was working for Davis and Henderson, I was a project director there, and my boss wondered, why do you hang out in the kitchen area in the morning? They had like a stand-up stool at a little table, and I said, come stand with me for a bit. And almost every one of my people in my projects walked by to get coffee. I took 2 seconds. I got my project update, and they were all walked on. I didn't interrupt today. Say, how's it going? And I'm done. And my boss was amazed. I'm like, you know, I've got all my project updates ready to go now. And, you know, I haven't bothered anybody. I didn't have to send out 10 emails. I didn't have to. It's because we're being social about it. And you know where people are gathering. It's the water cooler that we all miss nowadays. But
and also to add to that, like when you're asking people like that the questions you need out of them in a relaxed mood, they think of more stuff. You're like, oh yeah, well, I was thinking about it. We got to do this as well too. It's amazing how many of those little details come out when people are in like a good mood. Not like so many more details are caught when everybody's sort of firing on all cylinders rather than like, you know, when you're under pressure, you always make more mistakes. Don't you? Everybody does, right? As soon as you're under pressure, as soon as you're rushed, as soon as you miss things, if you can do it in that area where your brain is sort of able to focus on it and you don't feel like you're in a high stress environment. So like, again, your productivity, your production, your performance goes up. Like it's all of those things. Yeah. But yet you can't put this on a spreadsheet. So this is why it gets tricky, and it's hard to write in a book too. This is like, it's sort of hard to do this, like, and every group's different. So I think that's the challenge of it.
it is. And I'm shocked even at my level at how many project managers didn't really communicate at the level I thought they should, because it's kind of your number one job. And like I'd go to a change management meeting and everybody would have a hard time because the change manager would be like, have you done this? Have you done that? And denied, denied, denied. They'd come to me and you don't have your paperwork in, blah, 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 approved, and off you go. And everybody would be like, what are you doing? Bribing the person? I'm like, no, he's part of my project team. Like, he goes to the meeting, he knows exactly everything that's happening. They're not being surprised at the last minute with this piece of paper. Like, that's why you got to include the team. You know, when you reach a culture where you're excluding the team and trying to slip stuff by them, you've got a counterculture situation, and you know something's gone wrong.
All got to be pulling in the same direction. Like that's, you can't, like, if you, well, as we said earlier, if one person on a team of 20 to 25 is toxic, think about one person on a group of 8 or a group of 6. It's just magnifies, it's exponential. So yeah, no, not the way you want to do it. Yeah, we've seen many mistakes have been made to get to this point. Yeah.
So, reflecting on your journey, what has been one of the most challenging obstacles you faced as a founder, and how did you overcome it?
Oh, good question. Honestly, still overcoming it, and it's exposure. So we're IP builders. We build, like, we work with companies, startups, whatever, and we'll, you know, because we only have a team in Canada, because we only develop in Canada, you know, we do some security stuff. Everyone's you can still grab shred. There's still like a lot of benefits, and because of our mature processes, we can just get it. We can just build it. We're like a general contractor, if you will, for like technology, right? And because of that, we can't really go, hey, we built this, because like the companies we're building them, you know, the stuff that the projects that we're completing are for those companies to market for themselves. So it's literally like it becomes difficult in some areas to sort of like, hey, we did this, or hey, we do that, and then everyone's looking for sort of a validation, and you're like, oh, I can't talk about this, or oh, I can't talk about that. And it's like, you know, we have experience in these areas, you know, like smart contracts, like blockchain stuff. You've got it, like all of these different areas, and it's like, can you show us examples? You're like, not really. You guys do you do like really cool 5G stuff. Oh yeah, we do some really cool 5G stuff. Can you tell me about it? Yeah, no, can't do that. So, and that's the challenge. So it's just like, I think honestly, media and podcasting has really sort of helped sort of humanize us and get people to sort of understand what we're doing too. The services in some areas, if you're a non-technical person, even if we're like slick as a button doing like an elevator pitch, some people still won't sort of understand like, oh, what do they do? And it's, you know, depending on the crowd I'm using with, I'll shorten or lengthen sort of what we do. But like, you know, these sort of forums allow us to get people to really understand us and saying, okay, yeah, they're pretty cool. Like they're human. They've got some good ideas. They can really help us with stuff. Now I get it. So that's been monumental, but that's the biggest challenge. And I guess that's sort of the way we overcome it as well. And that is one of the biggest things that I've always been like, how do we get around this? How do we do this? But at the same time, I fully empathize with the companies, because it's like, we're building their company. Like, you know, we're building the tool that allows them to do this. So this is, you know, whatever they need, and it, you know, perfectly valid. It's their ideas. It's all that other stuff. So it's just, we're fabricating sort of their dreams and visions. So, you know, we've got to really just sit in the backseat and think of a different way to sort of engage with clients and get them to know how we've done. And part of the way is like, exactly like I just mentioned, podcasts here, but also like networking events we host, the length of time we've been in business. You know, we're the lucky ones. Like we work hard, but we've been around for 16 years for a reason. So that, you know, that sort of experience is now definitely, I would say, helping us open doors, because they look for that the maturity from a company that's done, well, those many things. So it's a few hundred projects has really helped. So there's a lot of those things, but still, yeah, the biggest challenge is still one we're working on every day, is overcoming that exposure issue.
Yeah, it's funny how many startups are doing like stealth stuff, and you're like, you know, exposure and awareness is everything. You know, if no one knows what you're doing, you have no customers. And there's a lot of things you can do, even if you don't want to talk about your product, to build your brand and build your awareness ahead of time in your industry and all sorts of stuff. I just don't understand is the whole part that it's hard. It's so hard to build that awareness. Why are you saying you're not going to start that until after?
Yeah, there's a lot of, you're right, exactly. Yeah, I hear like, oh, we're not quite ready for that, or we're not quite ready for this, or never. And again, I think it comes down to some of that like lack of mentorship available to enough people to understand like, hey, there's a huge advantage here to do this like parallel water, or don't run a waterfall, run an agile. Like we need to have an agile approach here, and like you need to validate whatever you're doing. So if it's like in our case, we do software, so it's like if you're validating software, you need users. So you've got to say like, hey, we've got this new product coming to market. We're looking for like testers, validators, because you really, really need that customer feedback. And like, and not only that, I keep telling people this because I've seen it happen so many times. Other revenue verticals come out of that. You're like, hey, we didn't know this before. And that's just because you were trying to perfect the idea or the problem that you were having. So it's like, I always look for that succession. If there's always like, okay, this will work for this, but hey, we can also use it for this problem as well. In some cases it might not be possible, but at least study the field, as it were. Like have a look at like, can you do this? Can it be done? Can you reuse technology efficiently? Which is always the best method if you can do it. So yeah, again, we need more mentorship.
So if you could go back, 16 years when you're starting, what advice would you give yourself based on what you know?
Exactly that. So the founders of the company are both tech people. Tech people usually live under like heavy NDA. We don't talk about what we're doing. We work with lab coats and dark rooms with only spotlights, stuff like that. Invest in marketing, just like it's just perfectly what we were just talking about leads up to this. It's just like, talk about it, invest in it. It doesn't matter how small it starts to begin with. If you can't, like, marketing can take some budgeting, but you can also do some on your own as well. There's social media, there's people in your networks. Like there's always ways to start getting the word around, to start getting people interested in what you're doing. Like you need a focus group, you need focus teams or focus companies, whatever, to try out your product first, because you really got to build that base. You've got to build a solid base of clients and customers. You need to be problem solution focused, and those are the biggest things. And so, like I was alluding to, like exposure at first, we wanted to do really good work for our clients, but we wanted to stay in the background. Well, that's great when you've got a ton of clients, but if you need new clients, it becomes problematic to like sort of get that exposure. So like if I could go back, I would slap myself in the face a few times and say, listen here, idiot, get out there. You need marketing. We need some exposure. Look in these areas. It's not that hard, and then also anyone who starts this as an entrepreneur, especially in the early, you're going to be stepping out of your comfort zone. You've got to get up every morning and say, yeah, I'm going to step out of my comfort zone again until it becomes normal, until you get it. A lot of this is going to be like fish out of water stuff. That's how it goes. You wear different hats. It's intense. It can be like stressful. It can be long hours, but be willing and open to sort of like step in to a place that you might not be totally comfortable. And so like media, talking to the public, all that, not normal for an engineer. They're usually in the back office nerding out with all the cool tech, right? That's all they're happy with. So like the evolutions of doing that. And that's partly like, Graham, when you interviewed him, he comes from like a sales background. So him and I are like perfectly yin and yang. I come from like the technical background. How does this support, right? Graham sees the vision so well, and he can, he's just so awesome at talking with clients and getting them to understand stuff from a non-technical point of view, that it's just like, I'm always fascinated on him and I work separately but together.
So before we jump into the founder insight and advice section, is there anything else I missed or should have asked about Iversoft's story?
I don't think so. I think that's pretty, like, it's as I say, it's always a work in progress. We've evolved a lot of the ways we work. We've added a lot of like really cool internal processes that really just goes to serve our clients. And then we've put a really good team together. So I think we've done this through years of making small, medium, and large mistakes, and then figuring out ways to recover and learning better ways around stuff, and like actually heeding the advice or heeding the lesson. So I think, but overall, no, I don't think there's anything we missed overall. We're pretty good to go.
For startups developing their MVPs, what common pitfalls should they avoid to ensure a successful launch?
Okay, so this can be a long list. So I'll try and remember like the most important ones. Over under building the MVP. So if you're overbuilding features because you've got to realize that you can only go to market with so much. You need a roadmap of things. Not only does that like keep people interested and like help grow your user base, but it's also like it de-risks the whole project because you don't want to put too much into the front. And maybe those features that you were thinking of don't work. So you don't want to have any more than you need to getting to market. Conversely, underbuilding it. So if it's too skinny, if it doesn't have enough, if it's too bare bones, and there's like, right? And both of those things usually point to not having enough testing. So you didn't use your focus groups, you didn't use your testers, you didn't heed the feedback from the users, which is critical. So that's another one. Ignoring feedback, not validating, making too many assumptions. All of these things are common pitfalls from doing it. And then again, a service company. So if you're sitting down and your business model is all around providing this service, but it needs some kind of mobile platform or custom, that's fine. What you need to realize is you're a services company, you're not a tech company. So don't distract yourself with like setting up a whole heavy overhead team. Find somebody like us for if it's a physical product, find someone who does like, there's tons of them. There's tons of like product builders, there's not as many, there's very few of us, but like lean into that. That's why I say like work on those partnerships, especially like you're going to need capital for your project. This is what I was talking about when it's like build the partnerships, these like build vendor partnerships that can actually help you accelerate or automate the work you need to do to get into the market. So if you're doing, you don't need a tech team and you shouldn't distract yourself with one if you don't need one. It's a huge headache. You need to be customer focused. You need to really focus on what are your client needs. And if you're going to start trying to do both at the same time, odds are you're not going to, it's not going to be successful. So. Oh.
Sorry about that. I was muted.
Yeah.
Scaling a tech company comes with its challenges. What strategies have you found effective in managing growth?
Just the implementation of systems and processes, honestly, just setting some guide rails saying, okay, like if we get this much work and, people are booked out 80% plus of this time, okay, then it's time to like scale up. Like we basically built a system over years. So it's not super easy to do. But it's definitely a project that has to be undertaken. It's like put in some metrics. What is it like? What happens? Start noticing, have enough data with what goes on day to day. It's like, okay, we get like, our quotations are like bottlenecked or like, the launch team or whatever, they're backed up with work. Okay. Like really try and understand where you need to scale and exactly where the pain points are and what's the outcome. Like, what are we trying to do? And usually it's just like onboarding new clients or whatever efficiently and smoothly so that nobody's way. That's always the goal, right? That there's no queue. But really have a good handle on the day-to-day of like how much the internal staff are working, how much capacity they have. I have seen countless tech companies bribe their employees with like, hey, work 24 hours and like we'll throw this extra cash in the middle, right? Like anything like that is a horrible way to run a team. If you'll burn your team out and then they won't be able to show up for work at all. It's the worst thing ever. So like we basically took lessons from all of those horror stories that we were around when it was like the early days of mobile and it was like the Wild West. And it's just like, okay, avoid all of these things, learn well. We took some Roman philosophy and it actually worked out, and said, okay, let's build. And that's down to like that's the CTO, Vicky Iverson, and the COO, Laura Townsend. Like they're building out the process. Like, how do we scale? When do we need them? How do we get them? Everybody smoothly onboarded. They work closely with sales, and like when the sales team comes in and says, okay, we've got some new clients, here are the new projects coming in, here are all the details, it's like, okay, then they can start working together and saying, okay, this is how we want to manage it, so we need to scale in this area, or we need these people. Sometimes it's not scaling across the board. It could be like, okay, we need some new testing people, or we need some more developers in this area. It's like really understand where you need to scale to. Don't just scale, like don't add people for the sake of having headcount. It's like really be very focused. And when these new people come on, make sure that they're within somewhere between like 60 and 70% of billable hours filled too, right? Because that's really important to make sure that they're busy all the time. So again, sometimes it comes with experience, or you can just be really, really sneaky and clever at the beginning and saying, okay, let's set it up this way. So we're monitoring how all these people are, what do they do in a day? What's their weekly output? How much more can we get out of them safely without burning them out? And saying, okay, what's the trigger for us to look for new people and add stuff on so that we can scale without disrupting client onboarding, while also not disrupting our own team too much. But it's a bit of a ballet. It's a bit of a ballet. It takes a little bit of work.
And that same kind of tracking is also useful for things like Shred. So when you're talking about where people are working and where they're spending their time, and your customers getting some tax credits back on their investment in your work,
That's all
it's always,
yeah, it's true.
So that's fantastic. You mentioned networking and how powerful it has been as a business development tool. How have you leveraged networking to drive Iversoft's success?
Well, in this case, I'm leveraging it now, which Graham has also been doing for quite a while. We do a lot of like different networking events. So we sort of have, 20 to 25 people come out. In terms of Graham even has tickets for them because there's so much demand for them. And basically it just allows like new founders, entrepreneurs, investors and stuff to get together and network with each other in ways that they wouldn't otherwise. So it's just like, interestingly, hosting events with groups of people that wouldn't otherwise meet with each other. And like the success of it's been, and I can't claim my own like as yet, because I haven't had this happen to me, but in terms of like using the same method, Graham that you interviewed, he's had some people come to his events 5 times just because it was so successful. So it's really like hosting these events can become really important. Not having huge events, you can have small, I've been to like networking lunches, which were really, really good. I've been to networking dinners, which were fantastic. So it's like we really leverage those types of events, small, medium events, I would guess, where you get a good chance to have one-on-one time with everybody there for, a couple hours. And then, you've got all these new contacts in your contact list that you didn't have before. And, everybody's learning about each other during the event. And there's enough people that there's a great variety, but there's, it's small enough that everybody can remember like, oh yeah, that was Bill, that was Jane, and this is what they do. And a lot of the times, there's a lot of really cool business development that goes on at those meetings. Conversely, at some of the really, really big ones, it can feel like nothing happens in those. It's like too many people, but these like sort of more intimate environments where the people actually have a chance to chat with people in a more relaxed atmosphere where it's not like a huge convention hall seem to be really, really successful for us.
It's funny how that is. I run events all the time as well, out of Toronto rather than Vancouver where Graham is. I'm not 100% sure where you are, but I assume out in Vancouver as well.
No, I'm out in Ottawa. Yeah.
Wrong assumption on my part.
Yeah.
But at my last event was lower than normal because of all sorts of circumstances. And I had 3 or 4 people come up to me and say, I'm really sorry that the turnout was lower than normal, but I loved it. I got to talk to the connections I met were so much deeper and better. And I had 2 people say they want to sponsor the next one. And I'm like, I did not expect that out of so don't be afraid of those smaller events. And the other piece of advice I'd give to people is if there's not the type of event attracting your type of people or the people you're looking to meet with in your area, start your own. Good conversations can be had with 5 people. Good conversation can be had with 10, 20, 30. So don't be afraid to start it.
And it helps with the exposure thing that we were talking about earlier. You can use that for your full company, for your startup. Like have those networking events. They don't have to cost a fortune. They can be very, very cheap or even free to put on. The whole idea is that you're meeting new people and people are learning about you. You're learning about them. And that's, more often than not, there's things that people find in common that they can collaborate with each other on. So they're really, really valuable. And for whatever reason, it might be like, I don't know, it's like a beehive. If it's too big, it's almost like this just noise. You get noise out of it. When it's small and people are a little bit less defensive, it's like, I think, you get better outputs out of it. So it's been an interesting thing, but like validated by the way that we do it, really, really successful. Like I had a dinner that I had 25 people come to, and we were getting emails about it like 8-9 weeks later saying, oh, that was a great event. Like I met so many cool people that I don't normally meet. So it works. It really works. Try it out, people. it's definitely good.
In your experience, how can startups effectively balance innovation with practical business considerations?
Just having that problem mindset first. Be focused on the problem. Don't get distracted. What are we doing? Like, what is the business plan? What's the business case? Just focus, like, innovate around that. Don't get distracted. And it happens. It sounds simple. It does. It really does. But more like people really do get distracted with a lot of interesting things along the way. And just use lean startup principles. Just as we were talking about scaling, like, really figure out what it is your clients are trying to accomplish, your customers or whatever is, what services do they really need. Just innovate around those things. Keep it really simple. Like, we're solving this problem. It's really simple to, like, just keep growing. Just keep building it out and building. Hey, I got another idea, right? And sometimes those ideas are great, but what you forget was you validated this idea, and those ones aren't validated. They're adjacent. So it's like you really, and again, road mapping is good. Like, you don't have to just explode on to the scene with like a town that popped up out of the desert out of nowhere, right? Like, you can start with something that's really useful to the client. Could be one service, and you can grow from there. It doesn't have to be all things right away to everybody, right? And that's easier to market. It's easier to speak to. It's lower risk to, like, to build and get to market. So there's a lot of advantages to it.
Yeah, I do one thing really, really well, and I like to think of it as, what's your minimum sellable product?
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
What is the one thing that you can deliver that people will pay for? And let's start there. None of this other, we're gonna have 100 features, great, but people are gonna buy for one. So you can be crappy at 100 things, or you can be really good at one. What's it gonna be?
Yeah, and it's so cliche because it's in almost all walks of life, everything, and yet they keep the KISS mentality comes back again and again. It doesn't matter what age, what era, what technology, whatever. KISS, keep it simple. Keep it simple. Just keep it simple, and that's the way to do it. And you've got to really focus on that one thing you're delivering, because you need to get really good at it, and you need to understand the very, like, small nuance to the whole thing, so that those other ideas can be validated that you want to do later on. And then, of course, now you've got something to offer them later on, which again amps up people's interest in the company. So the patience and, like, really focus is what I preach. Yeah.
What daily or weekly habits have you adopted that contribute to your effectiveness as a leader?
Oh, things that are totally opposite to work. Training, like working out all the time, doing something like physical healthy. I get up really early. I find getting up really early helps, like, because it's like you've got time in the morning before, like, everybody else gets there to really, like, and you've already started working on some of the bigger tasks, or you've already done some of the bigger stuff that you wanted to get out of the way, and you're more able to, like, deal with phone calls, meetings, and stuff like that, and you're still productive. But I find, yeah, I like to start early in the morning, so it's totally different. And just having the mindset of a student, you're always learning, especially in technology, right? Nobody's ever. I always laugh. Like, the word expert makes me laugh, and I'm like, yeah, you could be an expert for like the next hour, and then after that, you're not an expert. So it's like it's a term that I try to avoid with myself, even though I've got, like, lots of experience in the industry. It's like, we're always learning, and if you have the attitude that you always want to learn, I think those are the key things that have really helped me sort of get to where we are right now and scaling to where we want to go.
You're definitely an advantage if you're approaching things with beginner's mind. Yeah, I mean, don't approach things with I know everything. Approach things with, what is it I can learn from this situation? And that is where you get the customer insights, and also where the customer actually feels like you understand them.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah.
Can you
Uh-oh.
share an example of a risk you took that didn't pay off, and what you learned from that experience?
It would have been our company investing in a startup. And it would have been like a startup, like, it was in the medical field. Well, I'll say that. I had great potential, total use case, business case, perfect, everything. The one thing that we didn't have oversight on was their marketing, right? And their go-to-market approach. And that was sort of what, again, makes or breaks most of this stuff. And in this case, that's what we got burned on. So just learning, like, if you need to look at this holistically. So if you're the lesson I would take away, and I've already shared this above, like, speaking earlier, is that got to invest in the marketing. Like the marketing, you've got to like, what is your go-to-market strategy? How are you communicating with people? Really understand, like, is this messaging effective? Right? Is it's like the build it and they will come mentality only works in that movie. Like, it's like Field of Dreams is the only place that has ever worked. Unfortunately, but it's true, and it won't come. So even though, like, to this day, I think the business case, the business model, everything about it was like amazing. And it could have been used in other industries outside the target industry, with very, very little changes. So it would have been, it's fantastic. It honestly probably could have been a $1 billion title because medical is such a huge industry. There's no reason the US wouldn't have used the same thing. It's fantastic. But the execution and the go-to-market and the marketing is what killed it. So you got to be really careful.
Yeah, I always say if you build it, they won't come. And that's the thing that, no one's going to show up. It's like, because no one knows you exist. Why would they come? And anyway, it's that whole exposure thing that we've been talking about this whole time, at least through it. Is there a common misconception about building a tech company that you'd like to debunk?
Oh, that it's easy because everybody's into tech. The number of times, like, I've had lawyers, engineers, like, oh, that must be easy. Everybody's like, oh boy, no. No, it's tricky. Customer development is like really, really critical. Your networking, the networking events, and like working with like exposure stuff, all of that stuff is critical. The process, the ops process, the execution of like all the projects, mission critical. So you're dealing with like several different systems, both scientific and both sort of like social, all at the same time. And you've got to get this whole dance to work together, that one feeds the other. And it's got to be this smooth Swiss watch at the end. And it's really challenging, especially when you're creating from nothing, because half of these systems, you've got to create these systems. And then you've got to get the systems working together. So it's like you've got to scale to actually build the systems that you need. So it can be really, really tricky. It's really, really rewarding when like your project goes live. It's got a great response and everything else. Those are huge moments for us that like you'll remember forever. But like in the meantime, it's really laborious. Like there's a lot of stuff that goes on the within the executive group where they've got to like get people to like work together, and like scheduling, everything comes down to it. It's a big challenge. It's and as time goes on, because especially the mobile field and where a lot of this like the refinement comes from, you're seeing a lot of parallels between the software development industry that I can see and like a normal engineering practice. You're using the same steps. Your medium's just different. You have a digital output for one, you have a physical output for the other, but you're basically doing the same things. And it's it's tricky. Like we said, product does not equal business. So it's like all of these things have to work together to make this stuff sort of work. So yeah, I come across that a lot, actually. It's easy.
That's a good mindset. When you're doing it, if you're a founder and you are not doing it, it's not getting done. So that means everything is your responsibility. And what's the saying? Only an entrepreneur will work 80 hours a week to avoid working 40.
That's right. I say that I said Iversoft is my own virtual dairy farm. There's always a cow that needs attention. So it's it's very laborious.
So we got time for one more. What, for entrepreneurs launching their startups today, what one piece of advice would you consider essential?
Tenacity. Yeah, I've been asked this a lot lately. So like tenacity. Don't let the lows get too low, the highs get too high. You're gonna hear 100 no's for one yes. The goal is to make sure that doesn't dampen your enthusiasm, right? It's like going back to Edison. He figured out 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb before the one he did. So it's like, don't worry about it. You're going to get naysayers. You're going to get people that don't get it. You're going to forget it. If you have done, your foundational parts correctly, you've got an addressable market, you're solving a great problem that no one's seen before that can really help. Keep working and find those people. Get really smart, tactical, and tenacious, and get in front of those people and start talking to them. But you're going to hear a lot of no's. and just don't let that dampen anything. Just say, okay, didn't work. Keep moving on. Don't let that hang it up. Don't get emotional with it. Like, just push forward, because it's like, it is when you're starting, it's a bit of a battle, and like the best in it, it's mostly a mental battle. And so if you can just take all the rejection you're going to get at the beginning, and you're going to get it, everybody is, and just say, well, it's part of the character building process, and just, that's one more step and just realize that's all it is, then just keep pushing forward and you'll get there. Right? Keep refining your ideas, make sure that you're really addressing the business case. But I honestly, it's that simple word, tenacity. Like, just keep going, right?
And where can people go to find out more about you and Iversoft?
Just iversoft.ca.
Fantastic. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to talk to me and our audience today. It was fantastic insights.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.